Sunrise Daily this morning. We're going to start off, really, by looking at some of the major stories in the news. You know, yesterday, the Niger State situation basically took over our conversations in the morning. But, you know, we're going to see if we can touch as many as possible. And joining us this morning to talk about some of these topics is a man who's in the news himself. In fact, there's a story about him from The Nation. I don't know if he's ready. Joining us this morning, Mr. Sowore, the 2023 presidential candidate of the AAC. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start off with you responding to this. Have you seen this story about you from The Nation?
Well, there's a lot of stories about me every day.
The Nation is saying that women's rights group are decrying your attack on police women. It's got to do with the promotions that happened in the IG's office. And they say your narrative was dangerous. It wasn't fair for you to speak about those women that way, and they're calling some of the things you said sexist. They're accusing you of not being fair in your assessment of that promotion situation, especially when it came to the women in the office of the IG. Do you have a response to that?
It's a diversionary tactic. It's just to manufacture outrage based upon our position that policemen, women should get the best possible support in their job, get the best gratuity and pension, and that the condition of service should be good for everyone, regardless of whether you work with the IGP or you work on the field as a DPO or any position at all, that all should be fairly treated and equally assessed for promotion. So, it's always very easy for people to cherry pick and use some of these positions as an opportunity to target me because of the principled position I took, that people who are women who have served for 20 years ought to be promoted over and above women who are close to the IG, who have only served for 10 years. I think that's only fair, that we demand equality for all. In fact, it's my position that there are not enough police women at the top hierarchy of the police. And nobody's talking about that. They're talking about just one or two cases in which we found some very terrible irregularities. So, it's not the investment that I will put my energy and emotion on. There's nothing to it.
Are you alleging nepotism? Is that what you're alleging?
Yes, I'm alleging nepotism, favoritism, and incompetence. Yes.
But they say you have no proof of that.
We do. I've actually had posted the proof that more Yorubas were promoted out of the 37 police officers that were promoted, and they were
according to these people. They say it was actually people from the North Central that dominated that list, not Yorubas.
I have the list. Have they provided the list? I have 37. Whether it happened under the Buhari regime or Jonathan or Tinubu, we condemn any form of nepotism or favoritism that strikes at the heart of competence in the police, because all this affects loyalty and ultimately affects security of the people.
I'm sure they'll have a response for you, but that story there is from The Nation this morning. So let's go on to another story. And this one, of course, we expected it. We expected when the Tigresses won the Afrobasket. You know, one of the things that we asked here yesterday on the program with my guest was, do you think the president was going to... Because those are emotional givings, isn't it? He kind of falls into the emotion, and then they're very excited, and the same thing. And $100,000 equivalent in naira to each player, a flat 50,000 naira for the rest of the coaching team. What are your thoughts on these gifts that the president has given to these women who've made us very proud, by the way?
Well, it's very clear that whomever has done anything impressive in their line of work, whether it's sports or it is a teacher or a soldier or police, these are the best. And what people have been calling for, as you know, recently after the Super Falcons were gifted $100,000, is that a person who served for 35 years as a police person ought to be accorded the same opportunity and gift. And we're not saying that players are not great. They make us happy. They put us in a position of national pride. But it's also important to remember that if a player who played for 90 minutes can get 150 million naira from the president, a soldier who served for 35 years ought to get at least 35 million naira as gratuity, at least. That is 1 million naira per year. That's not too much to ask for. But now they're getting like 1.5 million naira, 3 million, and they don't get their pension paid. Sometimes people are getting pension as small as 19,000 naira. And some of them were disabled in process. I saw a soldier yesterday at a protest in Abuja. I saw it, I posted on my Facebook page this morning. Was shrapnels in his flesh. And they're walking around. This is going to be a lifetime situation. They can't even extract them. They extract them, they might get disabled. So you don't pay attention to all these people. But, we are very superficial in nature. That's the truth. We just get carried away. We like to show off. So you pay all these super falcons 150 million naira. They're going to get an apartment or a house, which they may never get, depending on, because some of the people who were granted apartment 25 years ago, just got them this year.
Different president,
yes.
though.
And then
it's a different president.
You go to
this
the
one
states,
might give it to them immediately.
The states are also showing off. Like my state, Ondo State.
Oh yeah.
The governor there hasn't paid salaries of Amotekun people, but he's giving millions of naira to one player. Gathers everybody. There are no teachers in our secondary schools. There's no security in the state. Nothing is going on in so many of the states, but they're showing off. But it's not only limited to players. There are other players in the political arena, lawmakers, who get paid huge amount of money, 30 million naira as an average take-home pay of a senator in Nigeria. A governor who only served maybe 8 years get a lifetime pension. They get their vehicles replenished every 4 years. They have security attached to them for the rest of their life. They have houses wherever they want it built or refurbished. But all the people that keeps this country going get nothing in return. So that question is what you're hearing from the people. Not that they hate the players. They are just starting to hate the game that's unfair to the majority of the people.
I mean, it's a dicey one. If you could advise the president on how to handle this situation, because it's almost like the elephant in the room. You can't exactly pretend that it's not there. The fact that a lot of people who are in service to this country are in penury, dying in penury, and then they see these lavish givings. Of course, there'll be, it'll rub off the wrong way on a lot of them. But how, in your view, should the president create this balance where we don't have people who are protecting us suffering, and then they're watching you be lavish with people who've played, like you said, a 90-minute game?
Is it that I'm glad that the conversation is even brought to the fore. Typically, nobody asks questions about these lavish attitudes of our leaders. But because fundamentally society is getting more aware of this reckless way of spending. And this, you see, the way it is done everywhere is to plan these things in advance. It should be part of our law that if you are a sports person and you win, say, a national, an international cup, you take a percentage of it, depending on what it is. Because don't also forget that the country has invested in you. You've been coached, you've been housed, you've been protected, you've been secured, you've been flown in private jets. So you have already had some of the great perks, and you are going to be the center of attraction. By playing for the nation, you also get attracted to other clubs who pay you a huge amount of money. So there shouldn't be an imbalance in the way others who have also served the country or who are currently serving the country are remunerated or given perks. It's only fair that we do that. But that should not stop us from appreciating those who bring us joy and happiness. But we must think about it, whether they are providing momentary joy or permanent safety. Everybody deserves, a place in the sunshine.
So let's talk about the protests 1 year after the End Bad Governance protest. We called it the August protest, and I remember we carried it live here on Channels TV for days. Just basically presenting to the people what it is that we heard our young Nigerians screaming about, demanding good governance at all levels. What do you make of the activities of that day and now a year after? Has anything shifted? Are things a little better?
First, it's important to correct that it wasn't a day affair. It actually was one of the few protests that lasted for more than a day. It took 10 days across the country for that people shut down the country. But what I've always said to people when it comes to social movement is that you may not see, the impact in one day. Sometimes it may not even be in a year. It might be that this is built over time, and one day it will come to pass that whatever it is they have been working for, the awareness will grow, the education will grow, people will get very, very conscientized, and one day will be one day. That's what I love about it, because if you look at the end bad governance struggle, it took place in the most unusual of places, and it was anchored by the most unusual persons. And young Kalakawas in the northern part of the country were the leaders. And when the government was going to clamp down, they clamped down. Then, for the first time in this country, kids aged less than 16 years old were charged for treason. It's never happened.
They said at the time they were flying Russian flags.
When did it become a
And
crime
then
to
it was,
fly
and then there
Russian
were
flags?
fears about, the situation in the northern parts of the country, and of course our neighbors at the time. Remember, at the time the narratives were that some of the anti-democratic messages in countries that are bordering northern Nigeria were being sponsored by Russia. That was a narrative at the time. So the concept of them flying Russian flags made the government feel like, okay, wait, we've been infiltrated by people who are trying to preach anti-democratic
We've asked these questions several times. When did it become a crime to fly the flag of another nation? You go out on Sundays, there is virtually no Pentecostal church that don't fly Israeli flags, American flags. They fly multiple flags of different countries. Why is it that their leaders are not getting arrested? What about those who are praying to the God of Israel? Why don't you go arrest them? They are not praying to the God of Nigeria, where they're based. It's utter legal foolishness.
But they're not pushing anti-democratic. They're not pushing anti-democratic.
There's nothing anti-democratic about saying you want a better country. That protest was not sponsored by Russia. It was sponsored by hunger and starvation. We all knew that. And it is the reason why they could not proceed with any form of trial against those guys. Of course, they've been adjourning as usual the trial, but would they have discontinued that disgraceful trial of all those young people? But it's an opportunity for us to say, look, thank you to those are heroes as well in 2024 who came out en masse, and we hope to see them again soon. Because the issues for which they came out and came to fight has not been resolved at all.
All right, I think my colleague in Lagos has a few questions you'd like to add to this conversation. Go ahead, Ayo.
Thank you, Kayla. Mr. Sowore, one major issue that I would very much love to start with is, the conversation you were having with Kayla about, politics and all of that. And I'd like to start with this one. We've started talking about politics of 2027 taking center stage so early. Now, the first question I'd like to ask you is, do you think we are being distracted from the real issues of governance? Or do you think this is the way it ought to be? This is the standard we should be following now?
Well, there's a lot of distraction, and Nigerian politicians are the best at distracting the public when it comes to serious social political issues. If you have 4 years to conduct governance, and 2 years or even a year and a half after that, you start organizing around election, you start pasting posters, billboards all over the country where people are hungry. You have not even taken care of half of what you ought to have done. Maybe the only thing that is an achievement in this government so far is a 30-kilometer highway that they constructed out of the 700 that they said they wanted, that nobody's using. There's a reason why they are doing it. It offers them an opportunity not to address the real issues, because suddenly everybody has become a public affairs analyst, not about hunger, starvation, or governance, but about who is going to win the next election, or who is in coalition or out of coalition, who is in the first and second 11. It is definitely a well-programmed way of distracting the public. Because when this happens, they've mastered the game. That much you can give to them, that when these things happen, people don't even drink water and drop cup, as they say it here in Nigeria. So it's complete distraction, and they've mastered the game very well. I just always hope that Nigerian people can see through this facade, but fortunately, they don't either.
Well, perhaps it's a good time to begin to conscientize the people around that one. In the same vein, there's also this, what is similar to that is the fact that while we're always talking about, elections at the federal level, the presidency, the National Assembly, it would seem like most of the time we ignore what is happening in the states. And from what we know, some 30 to 50% of revenue that goes to the governors have increased by, like, say, 30 to between 30 and 50% over the past how many years? Now, it would seem like we seem to be giving the governors or the state governments a slap on the wrist on this matter. How do you think we can give the same quantum of attention we give to making the federal government perform better to the states where the people live, to the local governments where the people live, where activities are more directed at the people? How do you think we can make that, we can get that balance?
Well, you have to admit that the Nigerian governance model is very top-heavy. When I say top-heavy, every buck appears to stop on the desk of the president of the country, and it is because of the structure of the Nigerian Federation, which is unfortunately a unitary kind of federation. So even a decision about local government are pronounced by the federal government. So when people look at what ought to be done and how it should be done, they always see the federal government instead of seeing the state. And the states at other levels have crippled the local government. And people understand this. No matter how you think of Nigerian people, they understand some of these nuances. Let's give you an example. The Lagos State government just conducted a local government election. Political parties tried to participate. They were told that they had no tribunals. So what did you see? No participation in the elections because they know the outcome already, that the states are worse than, the states, INEC, what they call state electoral commissioners, are worse than those of the federal in terms of conduct and character. So it is not because the Nigerian people cannot hold the local government leader accountable, but they already understand that the local government elected by them or selected by the governor is not responsible to them, it's responsible to the governor. They also, preponderance of population in Nigeria is such that more people live where the federal government has more impact. And it's reasonable because you want to be where the biggest part of the pie is, where you can find more impact and, of federal government. So what you see is not that people don't understand that state governments can be held accountable, but they know that it is easier to get results when you hold the federal government accountable because of the structure of the Nigerian Federation, which is very, very top-heavy, like I described to you. But there are people who are fighting at state levels. The question is, how much of those do we cover as media, for instance? Because most of the media coverage you get from states are directly done from the government house. Most of your correspondents are adjuncts of the federal government, the state government. So whatever you get from the state is usually something that is scripted by the states and their media advisors, or and your correspondents. So the information also that gets out of the state is very well packaged. So most people don't know what's going on in the state, except when the states are of concern or interest to the nation. Where, for instance, an issue bubbles up to the state, the national level, like you had in Benue and Plateau, or Borno because of terrorism, or Kaduna because of banditry, or Katsina, then you get to hear about the states. But when it's not, what do people really care about the state? Because they already know the characters of people who are running the states.
Interesting that at least you're also a media man, so you understand that as the media, we have our responsibilities cut out for us. Channels Television does its best, and I'm still you can speak to that as well, to bring up all of the issues from all over the place. But that also leads to the issue of whether or not opposition parties are playing the role they ought to be playing. It would seem like since 2015, the major opposition party had since gone under, since 2015. Now, it raises the question of whether or not you think opposition parties understand their responsibility in our democracy? Must a politician be in government to be relevant?
Well, that's a very good question. My direct answer is no. You don't have to be in government to be opposed to terrible policies. But the question we must ask about Nigerian opposition parties is what are they opposed to? A lot of these opposition party leaders or groups are not opposed to anything bad. They are only opposed to the idea of not being included in the looting or the sharing of the national cake. So if that is your ideology, which is what is normally referred to chop by chop, then you are not opposed to anything and you are not going to fight for a better government. You are not going to fight for opportunities to expand the democratic space. That is what largely is opposition in Nigeria. And the question is, the opposition of today are people who are unprincipled set of politicians who are gerrymanderers, people who move from one political party to the other, depending on where their interest lies. So we don't, if you don't have opposition, don't call them opposition parties. Just call them their real name, which are hustlers. And when you have hustlers, you can't have anything come out of them opposing the system. They're not opposed to the system. The people who went and formed coalition are not going to oppose a system of looting because they were looters 2 years ago under Buhari. They were looters maybe in 2015, and they're just angling to come back and continue what they did when they were in PDP or what Buhari ended. Or the ones that are there now, they have even mastered it to the point that whenever there is no opposition, they create their own opposition, create the impression that there's opposition. Look at this very abnormal situation where the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is also a leader of the opposition party. And on Tuesday or Monday, he goes to the Federal Executive Council and answers yes sir to the person he's opposed to. Does that make sense to you? I'm talking about Nyoso Wike and their PDP gang. Or you look at whomever it is in the ADC now. Why do you think they're in opposition? This is because they're looking for opportunities to do what they know how to do best. What is sad about this, again, which keeps disturbing a lot of us who are really, really opposing the system, is that people don't seem to see through the shenanigans. They don't seem to see through the dishonesty imagine from these politicians. When you see them, you see the way they are, the way they conduct themselves, you just know that, these guys are not about you. They are not for you. They are not interested in progress or development. They're interested in what they can get. And wherever that takes them to, when you call them opposition, they are happy until they get what they want, and they no longer oppose what you oppose or what you think you oppose.
Well, interestingly, it's not the first time we are having this scenario in our politics, particularly in this republic. Chief Bola Ige was in opposition to the government of PDP at the time that he was a minister. I think he was Minister of Justice and Attorney General. But that also leads me to another issue.
But you know what happened to him when he tried to exercise his being opposed to the system? They killed him.
Oh, interesting.
That's what they do to opposition of that nature.
Okay. Now, this also leads to another conversation around zoning. Now, a good number of people have been talking about Southeast presidency, zoning the presidency to this place and that. And then, of course, the leading political contender from the Southeast is saying that he will only do a one-term government of 4 years. But the question here is, there is no legislation to zoning. It's just a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, of rotational presidency. Interestingly, it seems to happen in the states as well. Okay, this zone has done it, let's give it to this zone in the various states. How well that happens in the states as well is something to also think about, to see whether or not it is creating the necessary balance. Do you think we are ripe for legislating zoning of prominent political offices in our country, given the impact it had on what one would call the leading political opposition at the time?
You see, the danger of the kind of politics Nigerian politicians play is that it reduces, the system of government to just seriousness. when people wake up in the morning and they decide that they are opting for democracy, what they are saying to you is that they want to be able to elect and decide where their leaders come from on their own, and that the characteristics of these leaders is going to be determined by what they present themselves as, not where they come from, not their religion, not their tribes, and not their orientation. But when you start legislating zoning, you are practically going back to a monarchy. It is only in a monarchy that you say that, oh, it is the family of this person that is the turn of the Oba this year, or whenever there's a new time to choose an Oba. That's monarchy. That's not democracy. And the reference to the leader of the opposition in the East that you mentioned, who was saying he will only spend 4 years, that shows that these guys don't particularly, they're not serious. If you are going to be elected by the Nigerian people and you are presenting yourself for election, you leave the Nigerian people to decide if they want your services after 4 years or even before 4 years. There was a time we used to say that, oh, the president of Nigeria must choose a Christian as his deputy, or if the president is a Christian, he must choose a Muslim. Where did it take you? When you zone leadership to different kinds of people, where does it take you? At the end of the day, the goal is to give the Nigerian people leaders who can develop the country, who can take them and their aspirations seriously, who can make them proud, who can make them safe, who can make them healthy, who can make them, have opportunity and a shot at sunshine, like I've always stated. Not to create individuals who are cocooned mentally in a zone where they believe that, oh, until it gets to us, we can't develop. Until I am president, my people can't get employment. And when you get to president, you go and create an ethnic province, which was the idea of having a country called Nigeria. Is because we already knew that you guys are provincial, but we want a country where everybody will have equal opportunity at the center. So if I want to be president of Nigeria today and I'm competent, you are saying that because my zone already presented a useless person, I will not be able to have an opportunity until the other zone provides their own useless person to waste my time. And before you know it, the country is gone. So it's senseless for anybody to come on TV or come openly to tell you that, oh, we only want to spend 4 years in power because we already have a covenant with the political devils not to spend more than 4 years because they need to present another bad person. It shows to you that they were never interested, and that's the highest level of desperation, by the way, to say that, oh, I just want a quick opportunity to do what I can do, and I'll move and shift away. What if the people say to you, in 4 years, we want more? Or because you had an unwritten agreement, an unspoken covenant with somebody or some people who are not known to law, who are not known to Nigerian people, you are going to leave. It shows that you are not serious in the first place. But it's a trick. Anybody who believes that a Nigerian politician will spend 4 years in power and leave after 4 years, yes, I have a bridge to sell to you.
You have a bridge to sell to the president. Well, let's talk about it, really.
Yes.
Because when it comes to this agreement, even though we were not privy to the agreement, it's like we've been living with the reality of this agreement, where and that's his argument, Peter Obi's argument, is that, look, the South is supposed to do 8 years. Buhari did 8 years. If Tinubu's done 4 years, if I win in 2027, I'm just going to do 4 years, which is the quota for the South before it moves to the North. You don't agree with this gentleman's agreement of moving power from one zone to the other so everyone can have a feel of governance?
What happens to the gentle ladies who are not in this gentleman's agreement meetings? But what I'm trying to say on a serious note is that if I have a good president in Nigeria who can run this country very well, I don't care where he comes from.
Yeah, but that's you, though, isn't it?
No, but that's what the majority of Nigerian people also are aspiring for. That is the idea of this federation, that all the federating units should be able to have an opportunity. You see, there are parts of Nigeria that you cannot geographically situate. You understand? So you have 6 zones, right? And also among the zones, there are also tribal warlords. So when you zone it to the north, the majority of the northerners will want to take the shot at it. And then when you zone it back to the south, but the south of Nigeria is not Yoruba, it's not Igbos alone. There are 210 ethnic groups in Nigeria, of which I may not be part of the majority of them. So when do you zone to the 210? All right? By then, the sun would have expanded and burned the earth. There will be nobody here left. It's just senseless. The reason we adopted democracy as a means and form of governing ourselves is to allow the majority to take a decision, not ethnic groups, not religious groups, because it's not everybody that identifies as an ethnicist. It's not everybody that identifies as a religionist in the country.
The argument against that, Mr. Sowore, is that we're not there yet.
No, where are we not?
People, we're not there yet.
No.
We still look at ourselves
within
north and south.
You see, whenever it comes to stealing, whenever it comes to using the most state-of-the-art vehicles, airplanes, Nigerians are there. But when it is time to do what is civilized and progressive, we say, oh, we are not there yet. You know, our democracy needs to grow. How long would your democracy need to grow before it catches up with the rest of the world? There are people who started their democracy after we started, and they have gone past us. Don't let us keep giving excuses for failure, except, as I said recently, maybe we are just genetically predisposed to failure as a people. That is why we always look for things that will make us fail as opposed to things that will make us succeed and progress as a people. One of it is not zoning. Zoning the presidency to the worst character in the country is not going to make you get anywhere. Give everybody a chance. That is why they said, come and contest for president or governor or local government chairman. Present your agenda, present your manifesto, speak to us. And when we listen to all of you, we look at your character, you look at your exposure, we look at your past or present, or we can determine your future. We vote for you. At that point, we don't care.
So all of these machinations going on right now, where everyone, almost every political party is planning on, is anchoring their presidential candidacy on this zoning issue. We're seeing the PDP saying they're zoning to the south. We're seeing some people saying, look, only a northern candidate. So you think all of that is hogwash?
It's hogwash. There are 18 political parties in the country. You're only listening to the 2 or 3 majorly failed political parties.
What's the AAC's plan?
We don't zone. There's nothing like zoning in AAC.
Are you still going to be the presidential candidate?
That will be determined by the AAC, not me.
Are you going to do primaries so other people from the AAC can...
Absolutely. There's never a time that AAC presented a candidate without primaries, observed by INEC. So that's why we keep asking Nigerian people to start listening to other channels. I'm not talking about Channel TV, I'm talking about other channels of ideas that can help this country exit these woes and this woeful leadership that has become our issue. I'm not saying it because it's a cliche, it's the truth. And this is how they get you marooned in those terrible corners of misery, which is to say, oh, we want to zone back. And when they zone it to where you are, you discover that when it is time for governance, there's no zone.
All right. Well, we have to anchor it there, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
being with us on the program this morning. 2023 presidential candidates of the AAC, and says they will be doing primaries. Anyone from the AAC can be a candidate, apparently, for 2027. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.